quarantine. The first deaths from the virus reported on the East Coast in Florida as cases in New York State quadruple. The crisis on the cruise ship, nearly 24 people testing positive, with a passenger on board requiring immediate medical assistance. What passengers are saying this morning as scammers prey on our fears. Plus, Dr. Ashton answering your most pressing questions about the virus.
White House shakeup, President Trump naming a key ally as his new chief of staff. The changing of the guard, with Mark Meadows, one of Congress's most conservative members, taking the job.
Facing a judge, Lori Vallow's first court appearance since being extradited back to Idaho in the disappearance of her 2 children.
Yes, I understand the charge.
The judge setting a new bail, with the children's grandfather desperate for answers.
Caught on camera, dramatic rescue. A skier buried under the snow.
Just stay calm,
Struggling to breathe.
Don't move, I'm digging you out.
The skier who arrived just in time to save her.
And final appearances, it's ta-ta to Meghan and Harry as senior members of the royal family. Their last engagements as the couple makes a whirlwind farewell.
Live from ABC News in New York, this is Good Morning America.
Hey, good morning. Happy Saturday. Let's get straight to the latest on the coronavirus emergency. Overnight, 2 more people have died, both of them in Florida. As we come on the air this morning, at least 234 people have been diagnosed with the virus in the U.S., according to the CDC.
Also this morning, President Trump has signed a bill allocating $8 billion to fight coronavirus. This, as events all over the country are being canceled, including the South by Southwest Arts and Music Festival in Austin, Texas. And some universities, including Stanford, canceling in-person classes and going online instead.
Meanwhile, everyone on board that cruise ship stuck off the coast of California will now be tested after 21 people on board already tested positive for the virus, 19 of them crew members. We have team coverage of this global health crisis, beginning with ABC's chief national correspondent Matt Gutman, who's in San Francisco with the growing concern on that ship. Matt, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Whit, and those developments are coming quickly right now. Just hours ago, the captain of the Grand Princess announcing that somebody on board required immediate assistance. They were maneuvering the ship closer to shore for a possible airlift. Now, it's not clear that that is connected to the coronavirus. What is clear is that there is mounting infection and frustration on board.
Overnight conditions deteriorating aboard the Grand Princess, a passenger requiring immediate medical assistance. The captain informing passengers the ship was moving to 20 miles offshore.
The Coast Guard has been called, and a possible airlift of that guest may be possible tonight.
The nature of the medical emergency is unknown. This comes just 2 days after test kits were lowered onto the ship, along with a pair of medical professionals, and hours after Vice President Mike Pence announced that some of those kits tested positive.
46 persons were swabbed. 21 of those on the ship tested positive for the coronavirus. Among those were 19 crew members and 2 passengers.
The 2,400 passengers already effectively in quarantine in their rooms, learning about the infections along with the rest of the country. The ship's captain voicing his frustration.
And we apologize, but we were not given advance notice of this announcement by the U.S. federal government. It would have been our preference to be the first to make this news available to you.
Kari Kolstow, on board with her husband Paul, is battling stage 4 cancer and now those fears of infection.
I go from laughing and trying to look on the positive sides of this to tapping my faith to crying hysterically.
There are 9 cases of the virus now linked to the ship's previous voyage, including that 71-year-old passenger who died after exhibiting symptoms before getting off the ship 2 weeks ago.
Right now, it's just numbing. It's just trying to process this information and see what our life holds in the next couple of weeks.
No word yet where the current cruise will dock or when, but now outside this San Francisco hospital, they're setting up tents to handle any overflow coronavirus patients.
You know, all of us have stories, so although in theory we understand that nobody wants the ship to dock at their port, but we have lives too.
Now, officials tell us the 1,100 crew members will stay on board that ship for quarantine. The 2,400 passengers, they will be offloaded at a non-commercial port and taken to probably multiple military bases for testing and quarantine. Now, federal officials tell us this has never before happened on U.S. soil, nothing quite like this, and that is the reason they have yet to fully formalize a plan for this ship. Dan.
Yeah, we're in uncharted waters in many ways. Matt, thank you very much. Meanwhile, the total number of states known to have infections is now at least 24. Officials all over the country are scrambling right now to respond. And ABC's Stephanie Ramos is right here in New York City, where the governor has just announced that 4,000 people across the state are in precautionary quarantine. Stephanie, good morning to you.
Dan, good morning. And one of those patients is being treated here at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, while other New Yorkers who are showing symptoms of the virus, as you mentioned, are being asked to self-quarantine. Breaking overnight, the first deaths from COVID-19 on the East Coast. 2 people in Florida succumbing to the new virus. One in the Panhandle, the other near Fort Myers. Both victims in their 70s with recent overseas travel. In New York State, the number of cases quadrupling. 4,000 people now in self-quarantine. 2,700 of those in New York City. About half of the confirmed cases linked to a lawyer who remains hospitalized in critical but stable condition.
This is like a flu on steroids.
The state testing around the clock. ABC with a first look at New York's Department of Health Wadsworth Center in Albany, the first state lab in the country to develop its own FDA-approved coronavirus test after the CDC's rollout of its test faced criticism.
There has been a lag in the ability to get tested.
Fear now growing nationwide. Some primary and secondary schools shutting down, including these schools outside Philadelphia. And out west, the University of Southern California, Stanford, and the University of Washington all canceling in-person classes for the next couple of weeks. In Seattle, 30 healthcare workers deployed to a nearby nursing home linked to 10 deaths. Residents quarantine inside, like Susan Haley, awaiting test results.
One of my dear friends was brought in last weekend, and she died. She was in relatively good health. That really makes you stop and think of the mess that you're in.
Businesses also affected as some Americans begin cutting back on social gatherings. Overnight, the NBA telling teams to prepare for the possibility of playing games with no fans.
Play for my teammates, I play for the fans. That's what it's all about. So if I show up to an arena and ain't no fans in there, I ain't playing.
The city of Austin canceling the South by Southwest Arts and Music Festival. Last year, more than 400,000 people attended and is a boom to the economy. And Apple is adding to the growing list of companies asking their employees to work from home as this virus spreads from coast to coast. Eva.
Stephanie Ramos for us. Thank you. And President Trump touring CDC headquarters in Atlanta after initially canceling his plans to visit the agency. While there, he blasted Washington State's Democratic governor. ABC's Mona Kosar-Abdi is in Washington, D.C. with that story. Mona, good morning to you.
And good morning to you, Eva. The president is downplaying concerns regarding the growing coronavirus outbreak, even insisting that the federal government has the situation under control during that visit you mentioned to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta Friday, a trip that was initially called off after there were concerns that there may have been employees there exposed to the virus. Now, while touring the facility, the president also addressed criticism regarding the delay in wide-scale testing for COVID-19. The president now says that there is tests available for everyone.
Anybody that needs a test gets a test. They're there. They have the tests. And the tests are beautiful.
But at the moment, the availability of the tests remain unclear. Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institute of Health says there has been a lag in the ability to get people tested. Whit?
All right, Mona Kosar-Abdi for us. Thank you so much. I do want to bring in our Dr. Jennifer Ashton, our chief ABC News correspondent, health correspondent on all of this. First of all, I don't know how you're still standing. You've been working around the clock, and we do appreciate it. I want to talk about what Mona brought up there, the testing. There's been a lot of confusion over this. President Trump says There are plenty of tests for those who want it. Mike Pence, the vice president, acknowledged there's been a delay, but on the ground level, what are the challenges that still exist in getting those tests out?
So first of all, we need to be able to test hundreds of thousands of people to really get a grip on true numbers here and how many people have been infected with coronavirus, even those who are asymptomatic or showing no symptom, and we are far from that. The other thing that's important for people to understand is that if you came to my office right now and I thought you should be tested, they're not in doctors' offices, they're not in urgent care centers, and even the hospitals that have these tests still have to get approval to run the test on the state level. And right now, it's just not possible to test everyone, nor should everyone be tested. Common things occur commonly, and right now, for the average person, coronavirus is not up there, but we need to ramp up our capacity in a big way.
We've seen a lot of local officials saying, look, we need the tests, and we need them much more quickly. I do want to transition to that cruise ship we've been talking about. Here we go again.
Right.
Thousands of people stuck on this cruise ship, floating out there. Of course, we had the Diamond Princess in Japan. What have we learned about how to respond to this, and what are we doing wrong here?
Well, I think we have to remember that we're over 2 months into this. The Diamond Princess cruise ship showed us that keeping people on a ship with this virus is not effective, nor is it safe. I think a plan could be swab test everyone as they get off the ship, send the people with severe symptoms to the hospital, mild symptoms on home quarantine with direct contact and follow-up, and even asymptomatic people on home quarantine. There's a plan, and it protects people's health in the short term.
Quickly, I do want to ask you, elderly patients seem to be taking the brunt of this. What do we do to protect our relatives?
That's the vulnerable population. So when we start hearing things like school closings, understand that it's not just to protect kids, really, it's to protect their grandparents as well.
All right, Dr. Ashton, thank you so much. We'll have much more with you later on in the show here. Much more on the coronavirus the next hour, including Dr. Ashton answering your viewer questions and warning about scammers preying on people's fears and trying to take advantage of the outbreak.
That's a terrible story. Thank you, Dr. Ashton. We'll see more of you coming up. We're going to turn now, though, to other news and a new shakeup at the White House. President Trump ousting overnight his acting chief of staff and naming a new person to the job. This is the fourth person in 3 years to hold this position. ABC's Kara Phillips is in West Palm Beach, where the president is spending the weekend. Kara, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Dan. Well, overnight, the president fired acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney after only 14 months on the job. Now, Trump announced Mulvaney's departure in a tweet saying, "I want to thank acting Chief Mick Mulvaney for having served the administration so well. He will become the United States Special Envoy for Northern Ireland." Mulvaney, as you know, was Trump's third chief of staff, replacing retired General John Kelly, who succeeded former RNZ chair Reince Priebus in July of 2017. Now, Mulvaney served as chief of staff in an acting capacity since last year. And Dan, there has been a lot of back and forth, a lot of questions to when, if at all, he would be leaving the White House. And now he is no longer in that role.
No longer in that role. So let's talk about who's replacing him. He's a vocal Trump supporter.
Surprise, surprise. The president says that Congressman Mark Meadows will become his fourth chief of staff, saying that he has known and worked with Meadows for a long time, Dan, and that they have a good relationship. Meadows is one of Congress's most conservative members. He served as the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus until last year and is one of the president's closest allies. Dan?
Kara Phillips in Florida, thank you. Eva, over to you.
On now to the presidential race. Former Vice President Joe Biden racking up the endorsements following his Super Tuesday wins, as Senator Bernie Sanders looks to slow down Biden's momentum heading into Tuesday's primaries in 6 more states. ABC's Rachel Scott is in St. Louis, where voters will be heading to the polls. Good morning to you, Rachel.
Eva, good morning. The next set of primaries are just 72 hours away, and former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders are both making a play for the Midwest, sharpening their attacks before the next states weigh in. With the next round of primaries on deck, Senator Bernie Sanders is out to stop Joe Biden's momentum.
And all I can tell you, whether it was Iraq, whether it was DOMA, whether it's don't ask, don't tell, those were difficult votes. I was there on the right side of history, and my friend Joe Biden was not.
Taking on the former VP at every campaign stop.
Joe Biden's campaign has received funding from over 60 billionaires in this country.
Biden, who didn't hold any rallies yesterday, warned against the primary becoming a negative bloodbath. Phoning into a closed-door fundraiser 500 miles away in Maryland, he said he is bracing for an increasingly negative campaign ran by supporters of Sanders. Just days before the next contest, the Vermont senator is focused on the Midwest. He canceled his stop in Mississippi to campaign in Michigan instead. The battleground state has the most delegates up for grabs on Tuesday when voters in 6 states head to the polls. But Biden, fresh off of that Super Tuesday surge, says his campaign raised $22 million this week alone and is racking up endorsements with 8 of his former rivals, including Senator Amy Klobuchar, now supporting him.
While it was hard to end my campaign, I could not think of a better way to end it than joining Joe Biden.
And the Democratic primary dramatically changed this week. 5 candidates suspended their campaigns, but that endorsement from Senator Elizabeth Warren is still up for grabs this morning. Whit?
Some big primaries coming up on Tuesday. Rachel Scott for us. Thank you so much. A mom whose 2 kids haven't been seen or heard from in months appeared before a judge in Idaho asking for her $5 million bail to be reduced. ABC's Marcy Gonzalez is in our L.A. bureau with what went on inside the courtroom. Marcy, good morning.
Wick, good morning. The judge granted that request, lowering bail to $1 million. But the mother of those missing children is still saying nothing about where they might be.
All rise.
This morning, nearly 6 months after her children were last seen, Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallo's mother is behind bars in Idaho.
Lori is presumed innocent.
A day after facing a judge on 5 charges connected to the children's disappearance. Her husband sitting right there behind her.
Do you understand the charge in count 3 as well as the maximum penalties?
Yes, I understand the charge.
Lori Vallow, who asked to go by her new married name, Lori Daybell, extradited from Hawaii, where she and Chad Daybell moved last fall, a day after police visited their Idaho home for a welfare check. Police believe the couple lied about the children's whereabouts. Authorities saying they told officers JJ was with a friend out of state and told others Tylee had died a year earlier.
The defendant has not only misled law enforcement in their efforts to find the children, but she has completely and utterly refused to aid in any attempts to find the children, even before charges were filed.
The children's grandparents in that courtroom Friday, desperate for answers.
I don't care what the judicial system does or doesn't do to Lori, but I do care about what has happened to Tylee and to JJ.
And Lori Vallow Daybell is due back in court March 18th. Her attorney says she is eager to defend herself against these charges. Eva.
All right, Marcy Gonzalez for us. Let's turn now to weather and Rob Marciano.
Hi, guys. How are you doing on this Saturday?
Yeah. Doing all right.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
We have a combination of storms coming together for one that's winding up off the coast of Cape Cod, and it dumped a little bit of snow last night across Boston. This is where the Boston National Weather Service office is in Norton. They got about 1.5 inches there, but you see the wind blowing. Cape Cod recording a wind gust of 61 miles per hour as this storm winds itself up. Kind of a combination of the storms that brought some severe weather across parts of the south and a Great Lakes storm, and now it's really getting itself together. Some coastal flood alerts because of a high tide that a full moon is coming, I think, Monday night. All right, we turn our attention to the west. A little storm coming through the northwest, dropping into the Intermountain West tomorrow, gets into the plains, looks like Kansas City, back through Oklahoma City on Monday, pushing into Indianapolis, mostly rain. The next storm, though, after that is a more potent one. That's coming into Southern California as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday. Wind, rainfall, could see some mudslide potential with this. We'll be watching it carefully. That's a check of what's happening nationally. It's time now for a look at your local forecast.
Hello, Ed. Good morning, Washington. Meteorologist Alex Liggett here. A chilly start to your Saturday. It will be cool today, breezy at times, but a fair amount of sunshine. Highs today around the 50-degree mark, mainly into the upper 40s, but a few spots near 50. Remember to spring ahead 1 hour before going to bed tonight. 62, a lot of sunshine on your Sunday. Also, that sunset back to 7:09 as we get towards the end of the weekend. 70 degrees for Monday, back in the 60s. That next chance for rain comes Tuesday and Wednesday of next week.
We spring ahead tonight.
We should never have to lose an hour of sleep.
Yeah.
Well, it's only really bad for people who anchor morning shows on the weekend.
That's true.
Let's be clear.
That's true. By the way, I saw Dan wincing when the way